Smile, everyone. It's Hollywood Breaks.
No,
Dude, Smile like killed it though, right? I mean, I didn't even know what the movie's about. I only just saw the trailer, but I understood it was a horror film.
Yeah,
and it's October, but
yeah, it's just about this creepy. I didn't really get the sense of the trailer, but I just saw it was all over my Twitter feed. That promo they ran during the Yankee game when Aaron Judge, I think it was when he was going to hit his 60-second home run and break the record. And I saw it on Twitter and I was like, wow, that's brilliant, because it's like the camera is fixed on that person, on the batter for, it could be anywhere between 5-10 minutes, and you've got this creepy weird right in the shot, just smiling. And I'm sure the broadcasters talked about it because it's probably a paid promotion. But even if they didn't, it was still like, if they just bought the seat for them and put them in there, and then just had them do it during like when he was up to bat. I mean, it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
Smart. Yeah. I know that. I mean, obviously for a horror film, you're looking for suspense, drama, and mystery, right? So even if people were just looking at a creepy guy and had never made the correlation to the film, that's also just a brilliant move, because that's what.
Well, the other thing is it's I'm going to tell you a story about something we did once. So this is a perfect example of how.
Wait, is this an exclusive story? Do we need to? Wow,
kind of.
There we go.
Not really, but so this is an example of how when it really works, because this kind of stunt marketing, very viral. It works really well because it stays within the theme of the movie. Like the movie's a horror movie, so you want people to feel uncomfortable, creepy, because that's what, that's why people go to horror movies. They want to be scared, right? Sure. And this kind of was in the vibe of that. Well, we had a movie, oh God, this was years ago. It's called Devil's Due. And it was a handheld version based, like, you remember all those movies where it was like a
Blair
handheld
Witch
camera? Yeah. So it was a version of Rosemary's Baby, basically with a handheld camera, right? And the movie actually ended up opening pretty well. And the directors, they most recently did the Screen movie. So they're doing really well for themselves. And I think this really, and the movie was really creepy, and they did a really nice job with a shoestring budget. But we were all trying to brainstorm an idea of how we could, make this viral, because you want to try to, something like that feels like it lends itself to a viral moment or something to do. And what they ended up doing was they had these little carriages rolling down the street, and then this demonic baby would just pop out and scare people.
Oh, Mon, are you serious? Like a hidden camera kind of a thing?
Yeah, almost like, a candid camera. And it's funny because Rob and I used to talk a lot of, about this after it went down, and we were just like, it was an interesting idea. The problem was it was funny. Like when we were watching the cuts of it, everyone in the room was laughing, and I'm like, this is not the point of a horror movie. If it was a comedy or spoof, this would be great.
For Jackass, really, it's a perfect stunt.
Or Jackass or something like, it's a perfect skit for that, but it didn't work. So I'm just using that as an example to say
that reminds me.
It's really hard to encapsulate it, but what was so brilliant about the Smile one is it really kept within the context of what the movie was, and that's really tough to pull off. And
your promotion reminds me of the episode of WKRP where they did the turkey launch, and they rented a helicopter and they pushed turkeys out of the helicopter, and it just become bombs over the city. Like yours backfired, in other words. It didn't really work.
So for those of you under the age of 50, WKRP was a TV show back in the 70s about a radio station. 80s?
It's Lonnie Anderson.
Yeah, it was late 70s, early 80s. Come on, it was WKRP in Cincinnati. See, I'm old too, Tim, so we can bond on our old.
Connor, can you look that up? I'm pretty sure it's the 80s, not the 70s.
All right, we'll see who's right on that one.
By the way, I did mention Connor, but this is Connor's last episode today.
It is.
And as we are putting this together, Connor usually writes our title for us. So we should make it really challenging for him today to figure out a title.
We're going to go all over the place.
Let's just skip around to different topics.
So then he's going to try to figure out.
Yeah, which one does he pull out?
Then he'll just call it nonsense.
Which is what we usually start with anyway.
Yeah, that's usually how we start in. Yes, exactly.
Hey, what do you think?
I'm out, bitches.
That's it. Drop the mic. That's what he's going to call it.
Yep, drop the mic.
Hey, what do you think about this Will Smith push from Apple? I feel like it's like an Oscar run, but wouldn't you? Come on, it's still a little sensitive about giving Will Smith any credentials or even the possibility of an Oscar.
Well, obviously Apple can't sit on the movie. They need the movie. I mean, it's a great story, great director, and Antoine Fuqua, and Will Smith, is a talented actor.
It's Emancipation. We didn't mention
it's Emancipation. The name of the movie is Emancipation. I think they dated it December 9th, but it's in December. So they're obviously going for an awards push because that's when you release awards movies. And so they obviously had to make a decision. They apparently had a screening with the Congressional Black Caucus, and out of that, they apparently announced the release date. So I'll be interested to see how they do it. I mean, he's been sort of out of the limelight since it happened, with the exception of that hostage video-like interview he did to kind of discuss the incident. I mean, I don't think that's going to satisfy it. I think the challenge for them is going to be, okay, what are we going to do? Because he's the star of the movie. We can't hide him from the press. But if he puts himself in front of the press, that's the first question that's going to come out of their mouth. Talk to Chris Rock?
What I think? That's what I was just gonna say. It's like, I think the interesting part is, like, if you want to understand how a PR firm works and PR strategy, this is that at full work, right? You have a $1 trillion business, behind this. Apple, the Apple content arm is not $1 trillion, but you have a large brand standing behind a film released with what was one of the top premier actors on the planet, won an Oscar last year, so at one point revered, who destroyed that whole persona in literally a second.
Right.
But now you have a PR company trying to figure out when to be silent, when to speak up, when something should be put forward. Should he apologize? Should he not? Because there's a lot of that conversation taking place. Do they ignore it? So that part of our industry isn't often talked about, but this is a very important part of spinning and hiding and sharing and coming forward and holding back. All of that stuff that can be seen as a gross part of Hollywood is also a necessity when it comes to promoting a film, getting the product out there, getting audience to view it. And honestly, people make mistakes. So people need to be put in forward. People need to be forgiven. People need to be understood. There's so much involved in personality and persona on a celebrity side, and then a product that you're putting together on a film side, and how those things be put together. So I think that's going to be interesting navigation next couple of months, is how all these behind the scenes elements have to come together.
Well, I think the biggest challenge for him and Apple, is there's a lot that hasn't been addressed. And, yes, he was apologetic, but it seemed like he wasn't at first. And that is where the disconnect is, because he gets up there, he gives that speech where he kind of almost justifies it in a way. And he stands up, and, the Academy gives him a standing O, which that in of itself was kind of gross, but not unsurprising. And then he goes out and parties all night at the Vanity Fair party. And it was only the next day when I think he realized that, oh shit, everything's turning, like this didn't go over. Like, people are pissed about this, that he was like, I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. And that's when there's a lot he hasn't addressed. And that video didn't really go about addressing it. It felt very staged. It didn't feel natural. And, that's going to come. I mean, I don't envy the new film marketing head, Dylan Wiley, who I worked with briefly at New Line, and is a really smart guy and has a really great background. And it's going to be tough that this is going to be one of his first high profile decisions in terms of how do we do this, and how do we make it work? And I mean, I think they can kind of look to what Warner Brothers is trying to do with the star of The Flash, whose name is escaping me right now.
Come on, Connor, kick it in.
Anyway, we'll come back to that. But and sort of the troubles that he's had over the course of the last few months. And supposedly the movie's screening through the roof, and it's getting, it's going to be a great movie, but they have all these troubles with him personally. And he's kind of tried to get in front of that by he went to the studio, Ezra Miller, thank you, Connor, Ezra Miller, and he went to the studio, had a meeting with Mike DeLuca and Pam Nabdi, apologized for all his behavior, and he said he's going to go get help. So they're trying to get in front of it. Yeah. And, because he's going to get questions, obviously, but it looks like they're trying to get in front of it. Whereas right now, it felt like Will Smith was trying to get in front of it with the video, but I don't think the video achieved the goal it was meant to achieve. So I think there's going to have to be either a sit down with someone like an Oprah or someone where it's no limits.
It's Oprah, bro. We know it's Oprah. Come on.
And you just have to ask the flat out, like, why did you stand up? Why did you not address it in your speech? Why did you go out and party that night at Vanity Fair where you just felt like everything was fine? Like all those questions are probably going to come up during the promo. So they need to get in front of it. That's essentially what it is.
So what's Dylan's job right now? If he's promoting the film, is he talking with the talent? Does he have an authority over what would happen with an actor?
Well, I mean, typically that's how it works at a studio. If you're the head of film marketing, all the routes of marketing reporting to you. So that includes PR, that includes everything. So,
and the agents, the actors' agents, like, are you in control of some of the next 3 months?
Yeah, I'm sure they're going to have a giant meeting in a boardroom somewhere where they'll just lay out the strategy and figure out how they're going to message this for the good of the movie. Because the movie tells a really great story, and it would be a shame for it to be overshadowed by Will Smith's off-camera antics.
It doesn't take that many steps, right? Oprah is on Apple.
Not anymore.
This is released on Apple.
Whoa. They split, and apparently it wasn't necessarily the friendliest of splits.
Really? Well, that's odd.
So now I don't know if that's it. You're not going to want to put it on Apple. It's going to have to be somewhere like on CBS, a linear channel where it's going to get as much audience as possible. Or you get them to sit down with a reporter or something, and they do like
maybe they could put it on Peacock, and they'd get from 15 million.
Or they do like a Vanity Fair or something like that, and somewhere where he's gonna and he can't put limits on it. It has to be like no holds barred. You address everything. You explain what happened. You apologize profusely. You make an effort again to reach out to Chris Rock, and that's probably going to be the biggest part of it, is going to be trying to get the two of them together so they can actually have a conversation, because I don't think they've spoken since that night.
Sure.
And Chris Rock is only now starting to use it in his stand-up routine. So I think that's going to be a big push to try to get them together so they can have that conversation. And then he's got to do some sort of unscripted type interview to really sort of get in front of it.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, that's the only way I see that really being.
And other voices that could chime in, kind of make it, get some information. Yeah, that's interesting.
Or you roll the dice and just assume, no one's gonna.
Well,
no one's gonna care. But the other problem is, if they're releasing in December, as I said, that's an awards play, which means guild screenings, which means sitting in front of an audience and talking about the experience. You can't, as a star of the movie, he can't disappear and just give the stage to Antoine Fuqua to talk about the movie. He can't do that. He's got to be there. So it opens a whole load of questions. So do not envy Mr. Wiley his job at this point.
I know. This is where I always think is interesting about how this industry works, is that, that moment didn't just affect him and Chris and the award ceremony. There are people that are downstream even now on a movie that he made. Probably, we obviously was filming or doing the work before.
Yep.
This product even this incident even took place. Mm-hmm. And now you have the downstream marketing folks. You have the downstream agencies that put things together. You have the theatrical release people. Like, there is so much more impacted from this one kind of key moment that rolls itself out. And when you're in this industry, to understand the history of who and why and how certain things happen is so important, because you're making almost political decisions, on top of financial decisions, on top of pop culture decisions, on top of emotional, all this stuff comes together, and that's the trickiness of it. But I also think it's what we love. It's if you understand this as a sporting event, it's where all the pieces are coming together, and the strategy and the purpose and the ideas and the play, it all kind of hits the front end of it. So, or the front end of what you're putting together. So I love that we're in a moment where we can talk about this. You and I can talk about this and share the goods and the bads, kind of the horror and the upside of what could happen out of this thing, and see how it really plays itself out.
It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I'm gonna be curious to see how they roll out the strategy. The trailer premiered the day they announced the release date. So obviously this has been in the works for a while. So it'll be interesting. I'll probably already have a strategy in place, and we'll see how it plays out. And they're just going to let it roll. And I think Will's going to remain quiet for a significant portion of time. And then once the big push begins, then I think we'll start seeing more action from his camp, and possibly an interview somewhere.
All right, I'm going to skip now. So this is just keep on confusing Connor. Like, which ones? What are we going to talk about today?
Yeah.
I did make fun of Peacock, but Peacock really is sucking wind, right? I mean, they have like 15 million subs. That's why I think they should.
So they have
steal
15
the Will
million
Smith
now.
interview.
Yeah, Jeff Show was on CNBC, and I guess they went up about 2 million. So they're up to about 15 million now. And their average revenue per user, which is called ARPU, for those of you who don't know the terminology, is around $10, which is pretty good, I think. So they're not in great shape. Let's just put it that way. When you look at like Netflix and Disney Plus, and now Paramount Plus, which is becoming the fastest growing streamer out there. But they're not in the best shape at the moment.
But like 15 million, sure, 15 million is 15 million. But if you put that in the context of how many people watched Seinfeld in the 90s on a weekly basis, right? Which is an NBC show. Right. Or Friends on NBC, like you're in subs at a third or quarter of what they would get in 1 week as in the viewing audience. Yeah. Like the numbers just, and that's content on a platform that's spread out across, I don't know, 100 shows or whatever. So now you're looking at 15,000 people per show or whatever on the platform, if you averaged it. That like the content creation marketplace and the dollars it takes to spend money on making those shows and then put them on a platform that isn't getting the subs, there has to be something. There has to be give and take somewhere. There has to be cutting back in some. Well,
I think they're kind of in a weird spot. Nobody really understands why Peacock exists, other than the fact that everyone just felt the need to get into streaming. And Paramount Plus is fastly becoming the Taylor Sheridan channel, which is very successful for them. So they've kind of built a franchise out of this one creator, which is genius. It's great, it's successful, it works. HBO Max obviously makes sense. They've got premium cable channels, and they've also got the Warner Brothers movie studio. I mean, Peacock has a lot of the same things. It's just everyone's like, what's on there that I'm going to watch? Now, the benefit they have coming to them is they're pulling a lot of the day after shows off of Hulu. So those are now going over to Peacock. So for example, if you watch any of the Bravo shows that are really popular, the Real Housewives franchise, the Below Deck franchise, most people, if you have like a Hulu type channel and you're not recording those from your Hulu, you can go and you can watch them next day on through Hulu. That's no longer going to be the case. So that all that stuff's going to go over to Peacock. So that will be an advantage to them. The other advantage they have is they have a studio that's being ably run by Dame Donna Langley, excuse me. And she you
like to do that every time, by the way.
She got knighted basically by the Queen before the Queen passed away.
She got damed.
Good on her.
So yeah.
And she's a former Newliner, so I always celebrate former Newliners who do well.
Right.
So anyway, she's very supportive of sort of the dual track where you theatrical and streaming, and so obviously they've got Halloween Ends coming up next week, and that'll premiere both on Peacock and in theaters. So I think that's an advantage as well. The problem is I just don't think the audience really understands why they need it. Like the necessity isn't there yet. Now it's entirely possible with the move of the shows going from Hulu to Peacock, that's going to help. A lot of these sort of, if they really sort of look into sort of building things from the Dick Wolf perspective, because those procedurals are hot. And as the entertainment strategy guy pointed out in his American Viewer series, those shows still bring a lot of audience. They're very popular.
Sure.
So if they build into that, that's a possibility as well. They just have to figure out, they have to give the audience a reason to subscribe. That's really what it's all about. And I just don't think there's a reason yet.
Yeah, it's maybe convenience. Again, like there are a couple of shows that we put on there, and I think the Olympics is probably what drew me to putting it on there originally. So they have those hits.
But that's every 4 years.
The Eurovision Championship is on Peacock, so I watched that during that season.
Of course you do. Of course you do.
And WKRP in Cincinnati might actually be on there somewhere.
No, yeah, it might be. It's a classic. You never know. If it was on NBC, it probably.
By the way,
might be on there.
1978 to 1982. So
so we're both right.
Yeah.
Right. I was 2 to 5, 1 to 5. Right. That's about.
I was 35. No, I'm just
just age yourself by about 20 years. But anyway.
Yeah. Right. No, I think that the legitimacy of any platform has to ask that question: what does it take to keep it going? And isn't NBC doing other things too? Like they're dropping part of the programming block.
Yeah, they talked a little bit. So there's been a rumblings. Jeff Shell was asked about potentially NBC pulling back on the 10 p.m. hour and just not producing any more shows for the 10 p.m. hour and just basically handling back to the affiliates to do whatever they want with it. I mean, he kind of died and dodged. He said they're discussing it. It's more about he quote unquote allocation of resources, which is another word for we need money to feed the content beast. Where are we going to get it? We're losing. So Comcast, the parent company, obviously, they didn't have a great quarter with their wireless or their internet subscriptions and cable subscriptions. I think they dipped or didn't grow for the first time ever. So they're kind of starting to hit that point where they're struggling. So they got to find money somewhere. And that's essentially that's really what he's saying is like, if we're going to really build this up and, make Peacock something as a viable business, then we really have to start figuring out how we're going to make it work. And I think that's one option on the table. I don't necessarily think he committed to it. I think a next earnings call from Comcast is going to be sort of an eye opener in terms of which direction the company starts heading with regards to whether or not they dump that 10 p.m. hour.
Well, that's what's interesting about the dropping in 10 p.m. hour is, so traditionally, for people who don't know this, there's a programming block that the national head basically produces. A lot of your sitcoms, half-hour sitcoms, come to that idea. And then the 10 o'clock hour was traditionally like a 50-minute episode. So your West Wings and ER and those kind of episodic shows that are a longer format were put in the 10 o'clock hour leading up to the news, trying to get people to maintain the local news. If they're dropping that 10 o'clock hour, they're kind of dropping that type of content. The 50-minute piece of content is what they're saying is it's not worth it anymore. The CSI format is the one. Yeah, exactly. Or spin it some other way where people are going to consume it, maybe recognizing that, the way people are consuming that 50-minute episodic nowadays is really binge watching. So you have to release a series of them together and let people just go through the entire, all the episodes at one time. So that's really more of the earthquake in that conversation is what's happening to that kind of genre format in the viewing world. And is that smart? Giving it back to the affiliates just means that, My Pillow infomercial is going to happen in that 1 hour.
Do you have a My Pillow, Tim? Because you always talk about My Pillow.
I'm trying to get promotional dollars on this show, Keith. Whatever we can do, I'm going to mention brands.
Oh, I love it. That's funny.
That's really funny.
You're going to talk about gold now too? No.
Yeah, I can. This one gold coin. But to have a major broadcaster asking questions about format, process, and what was honestly a revered hour. I mean, a lot of these larger shows, the George Clooney's of our environment today came from that kind of programming because it was a more dramatic approach to it.
Well, that was that was the era. That was basically the prestige hour. If you were in a 10 o'clock drama on one of the major networks. That was your launching point to, the next
your
big
film
step in career.
Yeah.
And then HBO came along and started sucking some of that wind, taking the air out of the room for that with regards to that. But I will say this about NBC Universal and the Comcast in general, or at least NBC Universal. They are definitely willing to experiment, which I think is a big part of why they've been, relatively, out of all the majors, have been relatively stable, because they are willing to pivot depending on what's happening. They did a fairly decent job during the pandemic, and they put movies on the streamers and in theaters at the same time. They were playing, they negotiated with the exhibitors to figure out a way to make it work. So, I mean, it's one of those things where, if they're looking at it, great, then maybe it's an opportunity to shift things around a little bit. Because obviously, there aren't a lot of people. I mean, linear television is still somewhat popular, although it is on a downward slope. So, again, if they have to allocate where the money is going to go, then they obviously want to go to streaming, because they have to lift Peacock up, because obviously they need that to work.
There must be something
it's a big part of the Comcast crown, if you will.
Okay, we only have a couple minutes left. So what I want Connor actually to join us. Maybe we can do our titling live. So I don't think we've told everybody the details, but Connor is leaving. He's going to go off and have a successful career in another field. He did sign a non-compete, so he can't go work for any other podcast or making their titles for them.
He's not going to the Ankler or anything like that. So don't worry.
But if they want him, I'm pretty sure he'd be available to that. So let's make sure we tag them in this part of it.
Yes. Yeah.
Connor, why don't you join us? I wanted people to join us live and hear your brilliance of what were our challenges for you this week. How do we get you? Are you challenged with the idea of a title for this week?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. The sporadicism really, makes it easy on me. I love the multiple gear shifts. It really helps me come up with a theme for the episode and a title therein.
So we are recording this, so please don't throw out some of the suggestions you sometimes throw out when we're not recording it. That's
I mean, that's part of the fun of games too.
It's PG related.
We also don't include all the title takes. So
yes, that is true.
Intro takes. So.
But Connor, honestly, Keith, Connor is our studio audience. So we are recorded in front of a live studio.
We do record it. Well, singular studio audience of one.
Yeah. We don't really know my audio on laughing in the background, because you guys would be like deafened in your AirPods there.
Mm-hmm.
As we're doing it.
There you go. Yeah, as we're doing it. Yep.
All right. What do you got, Connor? Let's throw out some titles, see what we go with here.
Okay. So I think we should incorporate something with like Will Smith, and smithing is also a verb. So and incorporate them. So like
smithing is a verb.
Yeah, like blacksmithing. Like that's where the
okay.
Yeah. So Peacock.
It's homeschool, Keith. That's homeschool. You learn verbs. It's really interesting.
Sorry, I'm a public school kid. I'm a moron. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to
Peacock Smith's new Showtime hours, stuff like that, really incorporates it as a verb.
I see. Trying to verbify it.
Yeah.
So,
That's interesting.
Smith's firm. Okay, try again. We got to find something else. I like the idea of smithing.
Smithing's interesting.
All right.
Smithing Hollywood.
Peacock then?
You could do something like Apple.
Will Smith's new PR campaign.
Or Apple Smith's the award season or something like that.
There you go.
Can Apple? Well, no, you're not going to get this, but like, can Apple Smith themselves an Oscar? Like that kind of thing, right? That's where, because smithing is
metalworking.
Well, they already won one, Tim. They already won one.
I know, but it doesn't. Who cares? We're not telling history, Keith. We're making a title for our show, and the idea of.
I'm not saying you're telling history. I'm just saying, like, maybe can Apple Smith another Oscar? Because they already won.
That's it. We did it.
All right. Yeah. See, it's a team effort. So even if I come with the final product, we get the ball.
Well, I think we're gonna have to help Michelle, our producer, with the spelling on Smith.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure how to spell.
I think I know. Me too, actually. Well,
All right, cool. We
Connor,
got a
we
winner.
appreciate all the help you've done on the last 105 episodes.
Here. Good work, man. Godspeed.
you.
Good luck.
And wherever you're
thank you.
going next, maybe they'll let you tune in on Friday mornings when we record this. So
I'll see what I can arrange, you know.
maybe
I
you
can
can
make it
gather
happen.
some of the coworkers around and watch it with us, and we can grow our audience.
Yeah, we can have a live studio audience literally this time.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we appreciate it, kiddo. Good luck to you
thanks.
publicly. You already know we wish it to you already, but until next
you.
time. And Keith, we got to at some point get Connor to go to the Liberty Bell bar with us. And yeah.
Well, you got to bring your Connor and then Brendan.
Yeah, Brendan's the other one that hasn't.
Yeah,
right?
I haven't met him yet. He's the only one of your boys I haven't met yet. So we got to take them all off.
He's not in the industry. He's an engineer, so I think he's.
Yeah.
I mean, perfect. You can look at all the old buildings and how they still standing. You can make it part of his.
He would love to.
It'll make sense.
All right. If you are watching this show and you appreciate all the work that Connor's done, we just ask you to subscribe right now to this, become a follower wherever you're listening to this podcast. Make sure you enjoy it. And Keith is coming up with on a weekly basis the industry's best newsletter next to the Inkler, who might be a possible sponsor. So I'm not going to, I got to be careful with that.
Yeah. Don't want to talk too much to their audience.
Keith, where can people find your newsletter? I want to know, get more people.
You can find it in it's called The Founders Brew. You can find it on Substack under Founders Brew. You can find it on my website, visioncraftbrew.com. There's a place to subscribe there. You can also go to my LinkedIn page, which has ways to subscribe. And on my Twitter, which is Real Keith D. Rao, at Real Keith D. Rao. You can also subscribe there as well.
Connor, did you get all that? You're going to be a follower?
Yes.
now?
I was taking notes. Yeah.
Looked like you were taking notes.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you later.
All right. See you next week.